How do you foster a love of reading in children? One way is to read to them. Another, find books that interest them. Yet another, make connections between books and their real life. That's what Andrea Carter did when she started writing and started publishing her Pretty Pop series. The retired elementary school teacher holds a doctorate in education. She also founded charter schools in Ohio and Indiana and had a sense of the kinds of stories kids needed to hear and the books children needed to read.
The reason why I got into writing is because I wanted to expand on what I've learned about some of the struggles that children went through when I was a teacher. So they dealt with a lot of grief, they dealt with a lot of loss, they dealt with a lot of trauma or just tragic situations, whether it was, the parents were divorcing or they lost a pet or lost a grandparent. And I had to, as a teacher, navigate through all of those and make sure that the children also learned. So that's why I began to write, so I could help to build strong, resilient children that can be productive citizens of society. I don't consider myself technically an author. A writer to me is a person that just lives, breathes, just dreams about books, just write all the time. And there's never a struggle for me to write. If you say, hey, Andrea, you're going to be in the house all day and you got to write, I'm like, yes, And I know sometimes, authors, they talk about how much of a struggle it is for them to write. For me, writing is just something that is second nature. And what I typically do is, the process that I go through is I'll just sit and I just think about, we have a farm and I'll sit outside and I'll look at some of nature, and I saw these birds. I got a book coming out about bullying, and I actually saw a bluebird come and knock another bird off of a tree, and very aggressively, but there was these little birds. So I take a lot from nature and I connect it with my experiences in the classroom. So my series that I developed is called Pretty Pop's Adventures. And Pretty Pops is an 8-year-old little girl, and she just happens to be a girl of color. For example, my series is written with all children in mind, because as an educator for the last 3 decades, I educated all children and from all different type of backgrounds. Hmong, Puerto Rico, Mexico, you name it, because I was licensed in 5 different states. And so with my Pretty Pop series, my adventure series, it's about an 8-year-old little girl, and she's very inquisitive, she's very adventurous, and she's very brilliant. And the first and foremost though, she's very loving. And all of her books are based on love, are based on encouragement, and are based on empowerment. Because my goal is to help support parents in raising resilient children and raising powerful children and raising those children that are going to be responsible citizens of society. Because I've experienced so much in the classroom in 5 different states with just a lot of the trials and tribulations that a lot of little people went through. And a lot of our little people didn't know that they were loved, and that was crushing, because parents may have been too busy, they were working with the soccer games, the baseball games, and they're doing all this for their children, but all that they want was just love. Do you love me? And so when I used to go teach in the classroom, all my students would line up, and the first thing I did was gave them a hug. I embraced them. And I wanted all of my students to feel like they did belong, not only in this classroom, but they belonged in the world. So this book is called Pretty Pop's Adventures. It's part of the Pretty Pop's Adventure series, and it's called David's Special Star. David is a dinosaur, and David had to navigate the emotions and things that he went through because his dad passed away. And so here's Pretty Pops, and she's going to support David in the passing of his dad. And so she told him that her grandma told her that, when someone passes away, they become a special star in the sky. And so this is what this is about. And my biggest issue was, or my biggest reason for writing this, is because I was dealing with emotions last year. I lost 3 nephews and 2 to suicide. And I had to deal with those emotions. And instead of stuffing them, I needed to address them. And this was an outlet for me to address it. And this was an outlet that I taught my students to just write. They lost a grandparent. I said, you know what? You can write a letter to your grandparent. And it's like, am I going to read? Are they going to see it? Are they going to read it? And I'm like, I'm sure they will. I'm sure they will. And that's exactly what David did in the story. He wrote this letter he wrote was to his dad. And he asked his mom, you think dad is going to see it? And mom said yes. And so this is just a book of just helping people navigate through loss, grief and loss. Because how do you do that? How do you say goodbye? What is the most effective way to navigate? And we know grief has various stages. And so how do you talk to a child that lost a pet, that lost a grandparent, or lost a parent? And those are some of the challenges that I had as an educator. And I didn't have any professional development or teacher training in college that would teach me, hey, you're going to take this class on how to deal with grief with your students, or how do you deal with the student with low self-esteem? How do you deal with a student that's battling suicide? How do you deal with the student that's battling, wanting to harm themselves or harm others? How do you deal with that? And those are the things that helped me start writing to support teachers and to support parents and to support children in their growth as an adult.
Her books focus on instilling wholesome values, courage, hard work, and more.
And I love this one. This is one of my first books I wrote about 8 years ago. I actually changed the title. It was Pretty Pops and the Goes to the Fair, but it's Pretty Pops Bright Lights Adventure. And I just gave it more of a modern title. But this book is about love and kindness. And it's about teaching raising a child in the way that they should go. So when they're older, they won't depart from those ways, those things that you put in them.
Nature and classroom experiences inspire her.
I come up with my title first. So I come up with my titles. And I have about, I want to say, 40 titles at home right now. For example, I have one of my titles is Freddy the Frightened Frog. And so I come up with a title, then I actually come up with a theme. What is this going to be about? Is it going to be about forgiveness? Is it going to be about love? Is it going to be about sharing? And then then a story pops in my head. So I have this whole, and I have a story about a toad, and it's about just listening and friendship. And so you take the theme, and then from the theme, you go ahead and you begin to write the characters. And sometimes my characters, the names of my characters have meaning, and that actually helps me to create a narrative as well. So then I create, and these are the same things that I taught my students. So that's why it became so easy for me, because in 2000 I had a first grade class in Oberlin, Ohio, and I taught my students how to create small books. And so we talked about the characters, we talked about the plot, we talked about the setting, we talked about the climax, and then, we talked about what is going to be the problem and what is going to be the solution, and what are the characters and how are the temperament of each character, or the personality for each one of the characters. So I think about all of that, and I surround that with my theme, which it might be just kindness. And then, okay, what is the main character? What is the setting? Where did she go? And for example, this when she went to the fair, and that's how she was able to exhibit different caring and love with different people that she were encountering at the fair. So that's kind of like my creative process. The biggest challenge for me is actually getting out there and expanding my brand and letting people know who Pretty Pops is. So the biggest challenge for me in being a writer is just people asking the question, who is Pretty Pops? And who are you as an author? And what type of books do you write? And why is her name Pretty Pops? And, why is she this age? And so that has been just been my biggest challenge has just been, I guess, exposure. Yeah.
Her publishing team is international.
My spiritual mentor, my spiritual dad is Nigerian. And so I traveled over to Nigeria a couple of times, did some international travel, but I was able to use various platforms to look for people. One of my team members is a spiritual son of my spiritual dad. And so I use him. He's one of my Nigerian partners, and he was able to connect me with my illustrator, people to lay out my book, and just help me create a team for my publishing company. So I like going with international providers because it keeps the cost down for my fans, for my buyers. And that's how so it all started out in Nigeria, is how I was able to. And also one of the things that it's much cheaper to print also in those areas as well, in Lagos in Nigeria.
Their professional relationship is expanded into friendship.
I've had a chance to get to know them, when it's Ramadan or they have a special a religious festival or anything, and they say, hey, I'm going to be offline for a week. I always send my blessings to them. If there's anything they need to know, I speak to their families on WhatsApp. I have fans overseas for Pretty Pops that their parents actually translate my book to their language, and then they'll text me or video chat with me on WhatsApp and with their kids and say, hey, we love Pretty Pops, in the best English that they can muster, right? So it's just a great experience. So it's not only me writing the books, but I want every one of my team members, I want them to be blessed with the content that I have in each one of my books. So I believe that my books transcends ages as well. Not only it transcends culture and ethnicities, but it also transcends different ages. I've had parents that talk to me after I have a reading at the library, and they want to talk to me about some of the messages that I have in my books. And that's what just interacting and connecting with people is one of the biggest rewards for me for writing. Well, first of all, I tell people, I'm actually consulting a couple of people now, and I tell them, you know what, all things are possible. You can do it. Number one, I want you to believe in yourself, that you can do this. No matter how big the challenge looks to you, I always tell people, So to answer your question, what would be the first step for authors or writers or people that want to get into children's book writing? I always tell them, first and foremost, I want you to make sure that you believe in yourself. Never quit on yourself. And the second thing I tell them is to, just sit quietly and listen to your core, listen to who you are. Be true to yourself. You don't have to be like anyone else. Just be true to who you are. And then that's how you create your characters, and that's how you're going to create your theme, because it's going to be coming out of your own life experiences. What did you experience as a kid? Did you experience bullying as a kid? Do you want to write about that, how you were able to overcome that? And that's where I have them start, just from their core. Everybody has their own life experiences, and they're not like anyone else's. That's what makes people unique. And I love to hear people's stories. I just want to add to just encourage people to stay true to who they are. They don't have to, fit this cookie cutter model if they're trying to write. Just be true to who you are, and everything else will fall into place. Because I truly believe that people were created for a purpose. So everyone has something that they are supposed to accomplish on this earth. And that's just my belief system. So just be true to who they are.